a lot of Bleach content is going to be pumping out the next couple weeks. If you enjoy Bleach content, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can stay updated on future videos. Okay, so I love Bleach. It's in my top 3 for a reason. I do think it's a series worth your time, but even if you haven't seen Bleach, you have definitely heard of its most well-known character, and that's the villain Aizen. Now I get it, 100%. I do think Aizen is a candidate for the best villain in shonen anime and manga. However, I do think the next villain, Bleach, 2 arcs later, is better. I know Aizen has his moments. He has one of the best villain twists in Soul Society. He's very well built up. He has his scenes where he fights the entirety of the Gote 13. He stops Ichigo's Bankai with just one finger. He has scenes where he frightens Grimmjow to his knees after we just watch him beat the shit out of Ichigo. And overall, he's just a really interesting villain. His motivation is really cool. And yes, before you go, motivation, yes, we do know Aizen's motivation. However, we just don't know his backstory. We do get somewhat of a backstory with the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. Really, that was the backstory for Shinji and the Vizards overall, if not anything. And he does have one of the best OSTs in Bleach. It's Bleach's probably most recognizable song besides maybe Ichigo's theme. And I do understand why he's so famous and why he's Bleach's most iconic character, if not just for Ichigo or Kenpachi, or really overall some of the cast members, but at least villain-wise, Aizen is the most iconic. However, I am of the firm belief that Aizen is not the best villain. I firmly believe the best villain in Bleach is Yhwach or Yhwach, right? Now, with the Bleach anime coming back in October, it's right around the corner, we finally get to see Bleach's best arc animated, which is exciting for 2 reasons. One, we finally get to see after almost a decade, we get to see the arc animated, and the other reason is to see my favorite Bleach villain, and that is Yhwach. Now, like I mentioned before, in my opinion, Yhwach is Bleach's best villain. Now, before I go through this, if you haven't read 1,000 Year Blood War, what are you doing? Go read it. Like, come on. It's Bleach's best arc in my opinion. I know the anime is right around the corner, and I know some people want to wait, but like, come on. You need to see Tite Kubo's art, best it's ever been, some of the best panels in manga, period, and some of the best moments in Bleach. What are you doing? Please, please, what are you doing? Go read it. Stop what you're doing right now. Pause the video. Come back after you read it. But if you don't care about spoilers and you want to continue the video, that's fine. You have been warned. There are spoilers. Now, let's get started. Yhwach is Bleach's best villain, and I want to go into why. So let's start with the powers. You see, Yhwach has an interesting power, right? What could top the perfect hypnosis of Kyoko Suigetsu? What could possibly top that power? And that, of course, is the Almighty. Now, the Almighty is Yhwach's main power. It is the power to see into the future, but also change it. Evident when he broke Ichigo's Bankai in the future, and when he broke all the Bankais in the future as well. Also when he says it, right? But regardless, the reason why I love Yhwach is he did what Aizen could not, and that was take over Soul Society and actually kill and absorb the Soul King. Well, kind of. He made Ichigo do it instead, but I feel like that's equally as impressive because he can make Ichigo do it. But regardless, Yhwach achieved what Aizen couldn't. And even if you add to this, Aizen was the son of the Soul King, while Aizen was just a random Soul Reaper who felt like a sleeping king shouldn't be in charge. So Yhwach has ties to Soul Reapers already and Soul Society in general. To even add to this, he has a history with it as well. 1,000 years ago, he fought and got handed an L by Yamamoto, evident to when Mayuri said, because you failed to defeat that man 1,000 years ago. Now, how did he come back, you might be wondering? Well, for whatever reason, Yhwach can come back. And I think that's because he's the son of the Soul King and the father of all Quincy. You see, the Quincy have a story. Over 900 years, he shall recover his heartbeat. Over 90 years, he shall recover his intellect. Over 9 years, he shall recover his power. And over 9 days, he shall recover the world. And Yhwach knew this perfectly, and he was a genius for what he did. He planned the entirety of the invasion around the 9 years part, where he shall recover his power, the Almighty. You see, when Yhwach first started invading Soul Society, he didn't actually have the Almighty, due to the fact, again, over 9 years, he shall recover his power. And he planned it to where he fights Ichibei right when he gets Almighty, because he knew without it, he could not defeat Ichibei, and that's evident because he's losing bad, right? He's losing to Ichibei. Ichibei is absolutely demolishing him, and the moment he gets the Almighty, he's able to say his name again, and he's able to one-shot Ichibei. Not only that, but if you noticed, Yhwach in flashbacks with Bazby and Hoshwalt, like flashbacks when they see him, if you noticed, he looks kind of familiar. And there's a reason for that. You see, if it wasn't for Yhwach, we would not have gotten the best twist in Bleach, and that being Zangetsu is Yhwach, or a fragment of Yhwach, since Ichigo is part Quincy. Once Ichigo figured this out, he starts to put the pieces together when he's talking to Zangetsu in his inner world, when he's getting his news on Zanpakuto, and he starts reflecting on everything that's happened in 1,000 Year Blood War until now. How he knew Yhwach was the enemy, how he somehow knew where he was going to be, or when he looked at Yhwach, when he was reminded of someone because Yhwach looked similar to someone he's seen before. And you might be wondering, well, that kind of comes out of nowhere. And you're kind of right. Until recently, I found out that no, it didn't come out of nowhere, and it was actually kind of foreshadowed by Kubo's part. You see, when Ichigo first meets Zangetsu, the text box where he's like, my name is, and it's blanked out, the text box doesn't fit Zangetsu. It doesn't even fit the kanji for Zangetsu either. It fits Yhwach. And it's even shadowed with against Kenpachi when Ichigo just miraculously gets revived from death and heals his wounds. Zangetsu is even lingering over him, saying, let me lend you my strength. But he never does it again, and that's even more prevalent when Zangetsu says it's always your hollow that comes and saves you every single time. Against Byakuya, you even use it just to get stronger. You use it against, when you get Vasto Lorde, that's when he's saving you. Never does Zangetsu come save Ichigo again. And Zangetsu's talking about how he never specifically trained Ichigo because he was not a Soul Reaper Zanpakuto. He was a Quincy. That's the reason why he's never trained Ichigo, and he's always let his hollow train Ichigo. Because Oetsu, right, the Squad Zero member that can make Zanpakuto spirits, forges Zanpakuto, also says that his Zanpakuto isn't normal. It's a hollow. That's the reason why the blade is white, because it's originally a hollow Zanpakuto. And Yhwach, or Zangetsu, knew this, and he was trying to suppress his Shinigami powers, because he knew one day he would have to kill him. And Ichigo's super conflicted about this, but I will not go into detail on the scene and why I think it's a masterpiece of a scene. I'm making a video, top 5 best moments in 1,000 Year Blood War because of the anime. Yhwach also explains that he planned on using Ichigo's Quincy powers, but he made a mistake on letting him fight a pure-blooded Quincy, because his Reiatsu remembered the true power and the true nature of it when he broke out of Kage's jail, because Kage's jail can't lock up Quincy's, and his Reiatsu matured early than expected, so he got it back during the first invasion. That reminds me, when having talked about Yhwach, there are 2 things that immediately you think of the most, and that is his role in the first invasion when he fights Yamamoto, and that is when he fights Ichigo. Now, I will not be talking about the Ichigo fight in this video. I'm saving that for a later video because I want to go in depth on the fight and why I think it's Bleach's best, but I will be going over right now Yhwach during the first invasion. Now, the events of the first invasion are really graphic, and they show off the power of the Quincy super well. And I know what you're gonna say. Well, Yhwach in the first invasion isn't really Yhwach. And you'd be right, it's actually Royd Lloyd. But, however, Royd Lloyd can copy a person perfectly. Their memories, everything about them. So, that would be how Yhwach reacts when he fights Yamamoto. And we see that, how he would react, how he doesn't have a chance. Now, Yhwach, whenever he's on screen, is always drawn in a way to where he's menacing. He on screen, you immediately know that's our leader. And when he's talking about, he wants to hear the reports on peace, when he's above Soul Society, looking down on all of the Shinigami, when they're freaking out saying he's in Soul Society, he's breached, enemies are here. And that's none more prevalent than when Yamamoto spots him for the first time, and he's holding Kenpachi Zaraki. Yes, Kenpachi. The one that we have come to know as one of the strongest characters in Bleach. He's just... no damage is on him, and he's holding Kenpachi by his neck. Kenpachi, the same man that rolled up on this Yhwach with 4 Quincy's on his back, dead. 4 Stern Ritter. He rolled up on Yhwach, and Kubo even made an emphasis that Kenpachi wasn't wearing his eye patch. Now, this is even more prevalent in terms of how Kubo wants to draw Yhwach in the menacing manner than when the real Yhwach appears against Yamamoto. We can see Yamamoto's frightened, he's shocked, and he's wondering how is he still alive, and Kubo made an emphasis on that. And instead of instantly charging at Yama or attacking him, the real Yhwach is calm and collected, and he even just has a casual conversation with Yama saying he was under the 1st Division building, and Yama is confused, and he asks Yama, what is under the 1st Division building? And Yama gets frightened, and he thinks immediately to Aizen, because Aizen is currently under the 1st Division building in prison. And Yhwach just casually says, I went there to recruit him. But of course, he said no, like he thought he would. But we still have all eternity, is what he says. And then Yhwach says, Yama, did you exhaust yourself fighting my clone? And Yama, of course, says no, and he activates Bankai. And Kubo was smart for what he did during the fight with Yamamoto and the fake Yhwach. During that fight, Yamamoto made a specific remark saying he can't absorb his Bankai because of how perfect and perfected it is in its power, so he can't absorb it. So, as the reader, you're like, oh, Yama's gonna go Bankai, we're gonna get a really cool, drawn-out fight between the two, and you'd be wrong. Yhwach immediately absorbs his Bankai and says, you were incorrect thinking we couldn't absorb your Bankai. Only I have the power to absorb your Bankai. And that is when Yhwach summons his weapon of choice, which, from what it looks like, is a Quincy sword. And then he proceeds to take the sword and one-shot Yamamoto. He cuts him in half. The person that Kubo's been hyping up since the Soul Society arc, where he goes against Jushiro and Shunsui, the one that was specifically written to where Aizen has to have a counter for him because he's afraid of Yamamoto's power, get one-shotted. And Yhwach proceeds to ask him questions, and when he gets cut in half, he asks him, why didn't you heal your arm? And he goes, you want to know why? Because you don't want to rely on humans. Because you want to put everything on your back and fix it yourself. And he says that even the Gote 13 have gotten weaker. How they died 1,000 years ago. The Yama that he knew when he first fought was stronger. He even berates him even more. And what makes it even astounding is he was so calm against Yama that he says he wasn't even on his 5 war potentials, which, if you don't know, the 5 war potentials were handed out saying these are either capture or kill. You can either persuade them to join the Quincy or you kill. Those 5 war potentials were, of course, Ichigo, Kisuke, Aizen, Ichibei, and Kenpachi. Those were the 5 war potentials that need to be watched out for. And then when he says that, you know as the reader that he was prepared. He was prepared to show up and take over Soul Society. And he even tells Haschwalth to tell the other Stern Ritter it's time to crush Soul Society. And that's what the Stern Ritter do. They summon other troops. And Ichigo shows up. Now, we get a scene with Ichigo and Byakuya, right? Byakuya tells Ichigo, save Soul Society, and Ichigo's looking determined. We even get to see, like I mentioned before, Ichigo somehow knowing where Yhwach was and even shows up to fight him. And Yhwach's talking to Haschwalth, saying, we have no other choice. Let's destroy him. And we see a full bring Bankai Ichigo. Up to this point, this is Ichigo's strongest form besides of Dangai and Mugetsu, of course. This is a strong Ichigo that has mastery over his full bring and his Shinigami powers. He attacks Yhwach with a full power Getsuga Tensho, and Yhwach brushes it off, grabs him and slams him to the ground and stabs him in the neck. And that is when we get to see Ichigo has Blute Vein. Ichigo proceeds to do either an amplified swing or a Getsuga Tensho. I think it's a Getsuga Tensho. And it only damages Yhwach's arm. It only looks burnt. And Yhwach was going to finish the job, but of course he didn't because he has to go back because his powers aren't ready yet. And when they're leaving, Ichigo gets mad and he charges again. And this is when, not Yhwach, but his subordinate, Haschwalt, breaks his Zanpakuto toe. And as a reader, you're thinking, if he can do that, what is the big bad? What is the boss of this man that's currently standing behind him? What can he do? We've already seen him kill Yamamoto. We've seen him take on Ichigo at full strength. And we've seen him overall just be a menace. And as a reader, you're really thinking he really is the end-all be-all. Now, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. And I'm going to be making a part 2 of this video going over, again, more of why Yhwach is the best villain. But the next video going over is, again, the fight between Ichigo and Yhwach. And probably Yhwach versus Ichibei as well, because I do think that I did not talk a lot about that fight in this video. But like I said, I'm going to leave it at that. And so I'll catch y'all next time.